They didn't start with malware. They didn't start with some exotic zero-day. They started with text messages. And from there, a loose crew of young scammers breached two of the companies thousands of other businesses trusted to keep them safe: Twilio and Okta. By 2024, US and UK authorities were making arrests tied to the group widely tracked as Scattered Spider. But the part that stays with me isn't just who got arrested. It's how little code this story needed. In August 2022, Twilio disclosed that employees had received text messages luring them to a fake sign-in page that imitated the company's Okta login. According to Twilio, some employees entered credentials, and the attackers then used those details to access internal systems. Shortly after, Okta confirmed that the same campaign targeted its own employees. The company said an attacker gained access to one employee's account and used that access to view files in Slack related to its customer support system. If you like cases where the crime scene is a login page and the weapon is pure manipulation, subscribe. I break down one real cybercrime case like this every week. Here's the thesis of this case. This crew didn't just steal passwords. They weaponized trust itself. They impersonated help desks, borrowed the authority of internal IT, and turned identity providers into stepping stones. When the company trusted to protect access gets compromised by social engineering, the blast radius goes far beyond one victim. And that is what makes this case feel less like a hack story and more like organized fraud evolving in real time. So, who were the targets really? On paper, Twilio and Okta. In practice, every customer downstream who depended on them. Twilio provided communications infrastructure. Okta handled identity and access for thousands of organizations. Hitting either one was like slipping through a side door in a building connected to an entire city block. Have you ever stopped to think how many companies outsource trust to a single login screen? The attack chain was brutally simple. Employees received SMS messages that appeared to come from internal IT or a password reset workflow. Those texts pushed them to counterfeit login pages. Once credentials were entered, the crew captured usernames, passwords, and in some cases, one-time multi-factor authentication codes. Researchers at Group IB, which published reporting on the campaign in 2022, tied the activity to a threat cluster it called Octopus. Cloudflare also said it was targeted by the same broad campaign, but stopped the intrusion because its employees used phishing-resistant security keys. Same social engineering. Very different outcome. And what really struck me when I went through the disclosures is how ordinary the entry point looks. No dramatic exploit, no movie-style terminal window, just a person on a phone, in a hurry, trying to solve what looked like a routine IT issue. That's the dark elegance here. The crew understood something security teams sometimes forget. People don't authenticate facts. They authenticate familiarity. Twilio said the attackers accessed data associated with 125 customers. Okta said the intruder was able to access certain files and obtain information related to 366 Okta customer support cases. Those numbers matter. Not because they tell us everything. They don't. But because they show the logic of the crew's targeting. Go after the company in the middle, and one compromise can ripple outward into dozens, then hundreds of other organizations. That's not random. That's economic strategy. Quick question for you. In this case, what was worse? The human error of trusting the text, or the structural problem that so many companies were concentrated behind a few identity and communications providers? Tell me in the comments. Then the story got bigger. Access stolen through social engineering was not the end goal. It was the beginning. Investigators and public reporting later tied people associated with Scattered Spider to a broader pattern: credential theft, internal reconnaissance, SIM swapping, help desk impersonation, and extortion. In some cases, victims were pressured with threats to leak data. In others, the access fed into ransomware operations linked by researchers to crews like ALF-PV, also known as Black Cat. A text message was just the knock on the door. And this is where the case stops being the Okta incident and becomes something more unsettling. These weren't master exploit developers first. Reports described many of them as fluent social engineers, young, aggressive, adaptive, often coordinating in online communities, sometimes switching from one fraud niche to another with alarming speed. When prosecutors and researchers started mapping the ecosystem, what emerged was not one neat gang with a logo. It was a criminal social network built around access, status, and cash. What do you even defend against when the attack surface is trust between employees? Here's the turn in the story that I think too many summaries skip. The breach chain didn't just expose weak logins, it exposed a weak assumption that if you buy security from a trusted vendor, you've transferred the risk. You haven't. You've concentrated it. And once this crew proved it could trick employees at companies like Twilio and Okta, the playbook kept surfacing in later campaigns tied to telecom fraud, MGM resorts, Caesars, and high-pressure extortion operations. Different victims, same human lever. That's the insight that stayed with me. We talk about cybercrime like it's a war of software against software. A patch versus an exploit. A detector versus malware. This case says something colder. Sometimes the key contest is performance. Who sounds more believable on the phone? The real help desk or the criminal pretending to be it? That should make every company uncomfortable. The human cost is easy to flatten because there wasn't one dramatic explosion, but there were real consequences. Incident response teams pulled into emergency mode. Customers forced to review tokens, sessions, credentials, and support workflows. Employees caught in the middle of public fallout. Clients left asking whether the company they trusted to secure access had its safe become a risk factor. In extortion cases linked to this ecosystem, the pressure was even more personal. Pay or stolen data gets exposed. Public reporting in 2024 showed law enforcement finally tightening the circle. The U.S. Department of Justice announced charges against individuals alleged to be part of Scattered Spider-related activity. In the UK, authorities also announced arrests of young suspects investigated over attacks on major companies, including MGM resorts. Exact memberships and aliases in this world can be messy, and that matters. I don't want to oversimplify a fluid online crew into a tidy movie cast. But the direction was clear. Investigators were no longer treating these cases as isolated help desk scams. They were treating them as organized, cyber-enabled extortion. And there's an irony here I can't ignore. Some of the companies hit in this chain existed to reduce friction, faster access, easier recovery, smoother authentication. Those are good things. Until an attacker learns to impersonate the process designed to help you. security and convenience have always been in tension. This crew lived inside that gap. If that detail hit you as hard as it hit me when I read through the disclosures, leave a like. Cases like this deserve to be understood beyond the headline. Excited. Defenses did evolve. Cloudflare's account of the same campaign became a kind of case study for phishing-resistant MFA. Security teams pushed harder on hardware security keys, stronger identity verification for help desk resets, tighter vendor access controls, and better training around SMS phishing. That doesn't mean the problem is solved. It means the lesson got more expensive. My view? This case should be remembered less as a story about one vendor being breached and more as a warning about dependency. If one social engineering crew can penetrate identity and communications platforms that sit at the center of thousands of companies, then trust is no longer just a business advantage. It's critical infrastructure. And critical infrastructure built on humans answering urgent messages will always be under pressure. By the time the arrests arrived in 2024, the pattern was already obvious. The crew had shown that you don't need advanced malware to punch above your weight. Sometimes all you need is timing, credibility, and a target who believes the text in front of them. That's what makes this case so unsettling. The first breach happened on a screen every one of us checks 100 times a day. So, the next time your phone buzzes with a message that looks routine, ask yourself one question. Who is really on the other side of trust? If true crime tech fascinates you, subscribe and join me. Here, the details come from indictments, disclosures, and the evidence behind the headlines. Next week, I'll bring you another case where the smallest human moment opened the biggest door.